Hello and welcome to a new episode of Beyond the Ice Walls, the world beyond the ice walls. This is the 5th episode of this series, and it's a series where we discover what is going on in this world that is beyond the ice walls, the lands beyond it, the lands that were originally unknown to humanity are actually discovered through the 4 gates of the ice wall. So we have the Leviathan's gate, then we have the Sentinel's gate, then we have the Tiger's gate, and we have the Serpent's gate. We have covered these 3 gates, and today we will be covering some of the continents beyond the ice walls in the southeastern part of the beyond these ice walls lands. And once again, I recommend everybody to actually go watch the previous videos, which I will link in the description of this video. Otherwise, you will have issues trying to understand what we are talking about. So the gist of it, so that like the small parts of the lore, is that the expedition made by Magellan to go around the world, or at least how we thought would go around the world, actually went to the Sentinel's Gate, and he discovered that the Antarctic Shield, which is this entire wall here that rounds up the world, actually has an opening that actually opened through a mystical vision, and they actually went inside it and started to colonize it through the European powers of the 15th century and of the 16th century. And these European powers of the 16th century would start to colonize the lands both in the mainland of the world, so America, South America, Africa, Asia, and so on and so forth. But they would actually explore the lands beyond the ice wall, so Xenonesia, Aten, things like Jiposu. When we have some minor continents here like Apizia, we explore Thoth, the nomad continent, a land that actually moves in size and actually moves around. And then in the last episode we actually discovered Min and Nevis, and finally the islands of Antillia. So today we will be covering the lands of the islands of the Blessed, as well as the Heber, masog, and the Avalons. So of course the technology of this era is still in the 18th century, or actually the start, I would assume the start of the 19th century, but the knowledge spread through the discovery of the ice wall, of the land beyond the ice walls, has really made the entire Earth something completely different. So let's start by checking out the lands of Heber masog. A land between times, Brasil was known by the early Celtic peoples as a small elusive island off the coast of Ireland that was constantly shrouded in mist, only visible once every 7 years when the fog cleared. Eventually the island disappeared entirely, fading into obscure folklore as the centuries passed. The truth behind the legend was that the small island used to exist as part of the British Isles, but due to an unexpected spatial distortion, it began to periodically shift locations, moving from nearby Ireland off the coast of Heber masog. It slowly began to spend more and more time in its new position in the second ring, until it stranded in a truly alien world. Although the population of Celtic people found themselves stranded. The arrival of the Brazilians and the diseases they carried was devastating for the native Kenwug Neanderthals, but not much better for the Celtic farmers, whose livestock couldn't digest the native plants. The ways to survival lay into cooperation. When the Europeans arrived, this in the colonization era, the continent was perhaps a third Brazilian, a third Kenwug, and the rest a mix, all of whom were devastated once more by a new wave of diseases, collapsing in a confederation of pastoral tribes. Their broadly Mediterranean climate has made them much more popular for settlers, with parts of their pirate-riddled northern coast being downright temperate. So already you can see some of the lore coming around. So a lot of you will already know the story of Brasil. It was a land that actually exists, at least it's thought to have existed, or it was theorized in an area like this here, and it was like the cousin of Ireland in some way. and eventually they would actually not ever find it again after a while in history. I believe in the 13th century. After the 13th or 14th century they would not find it anymore, so either it was sunk in the sea, or as this explanation puts it, through a spatial distortion it just went into the second ring. So in this case we have a continent, here this one, Heber masog, which is both inhabited by Neanderthals, which were the original hominids that inhabited Europe and parts of Asia, and the second settler strands, which are the ones coming from Brasil. So I hope that is much of an explanation. Let's check the actual political entities that are existing on this island. Also, before we do, here we have some nice art that shows a Brazilian man, a Kenwog man, which are the Neanderthals, and gunpowder was independently invented in Heber masog around the year 1500. So you can really see how, despite the actual land being so much divided from the rest of Europe, it had a technological advancement similar to it through the importation of the technology made by the Brazilians. Let's start by the Republic of Rumbian, Spanish and Prussian ports that united under a confederation after the collapse of their parent empires. Waves of refugees and migrant workers from Thoth have created a highly cosmopolitan society with no ethnic or religious majority. So this is the first state, this one here, and it is a post-Prussian and post-Spanish colony. As we have seen in the earlier episodes, the Prussians and the Spanish were some of the major colonizers of Europe, or at least the Spanish were, the Prussians were less, but the Spanish Empire collapsed after Napoleon's invasions, and now Napoleon III, this guy right here, rules the majority of Europe. I mean, not now, but you know, in those times, ruled the majority of Europe, so even Prussia is somewhat of a satellite of the French Empire. Okay, so next we have the Arotcatzuac, a former Spanish colony conquered by Basque pirates, now pseudo-colony of Mundaberia. For those that do not know, and we're actually going to be doing a bit of connection here, Mundaberia is a Basque majority territory in the second ring that was created by Basque settlers and was not part of the Spanish Empire. So this is pretty peculiar, and it's one of the only realms in the second ring that actually owns territories in the second ring as colonies. So it's like a third degree colony, I would probably argue. Okay, there we go. Then we have the territory of Costa Rocosa, Spanish conquistadors ruling over local Brazilian villages, facing invasions from its neighbors on both sides. They've struck an alliance with local Kenwog Hill tribes in an attempt to defend their borders. So these are actually like Brazilian men being ruled by the Spanish Empire, but of course, since the Spanish Empire fell, they are just now trying to reconciliate with the Neanderthals, which live, I believe, mostly in the interior of this land. Then we have the Zikagobot Fold, Hungarian pirates ruling over Brazilians, Kenwog plus stranded Spaniards. So this is just an attempt by some Hungarian settlers and pirates to rule a part of the continent of Heber masog, but apparently it's not going too well, as stranded Spaniards plus pirates, not really the best recipe for state. Then we have a colony of the Scandinavian Empire, which, in case you don't know, is one of the biggest colonial empires still existing, with lands beyond the ice walls. They own this entirety of the lands here in Helig, Doran, Binnig, and they even hold a lot of lands here in the lands of Minsk and Nevis and Lyonesse. So we'll be tracing a line all the way from the colonization of this area right here to the colonization of the territories right there. We already traced some lines here. As you can see, these territories seem to be all between the similar routes of navigation. It would make sense, I guess. And this colony called Gleimtierland is a Viking-like skill in naval battles to fend off pirates and Venetians, like completely law-abiding. So interesting that they mentioned the Venetians, in case you don't know or don't remember. The Venetians were one of the major colonial powers of this world, but their empire fell after they were incorporated into the Kingdom of Italy, which used to be a puppet of the French Empire, but eventually they declared independence, or at least just divided themselves from the rest of the empire. So Venice was one of the major trade hubs and major colonizers that set up a lot of colonies. They had one very interesting one here called Yacho Splendente, a post-Venetian colony that basically operated as a massive casino. But here it appears that there were some Venetian territories, which appear to be these islands here, Miracolo nel Mondo, another charming post-Venetian city-state. So already you can see how the Venetians only very often just hold a lot of sway over these territories. Also, I can't find the actual Holy Brasil. Oh, it's this one. It's this very small island here. Okay, so this one is, I am going to assume, the original Brasil, a mysterious island that was once positioned off the coast of Ireland, where it was settled by early Celtic peoples. It was known to be hidden by an impassable mist only accessible from the outside every 7 years. Until one day, around the birth of Christ, the mists would lift once again, only for the Brazilians to find their island surrounded by strange new waters, swarming with bizarre, otherworldly creatures. The long-confined people of this misty island would finally be free to leave their homeland and explore the vast alien world. I mean, it's not alien in the sense that they're literally aliens, but alien in the sense that is new. Over the millennia, the island has become something of a holy site to the Brazilian peoples living on the mainland of Heber Masog, with it being a homeland of their ancestors, a hotspot for faith sightings, and home to the only trees, grasses, and cattle to be found on this side of the Avalons, because apparently those things do not grow on the territories of Heber Masog, which is the continent we are looking at. Then we have the Albogukie of Klalkawovo, I'm going to assume that's how it's pronounced. It's this very internal realm that is, yeah, it's probably ruled by the Neanderthals, which seem to be mainly living in the interior of these lands. Then we have some Portuguese colony, not really expanded upon much, just to look like some ports here, Nijo de Ovos and Passaro Grande. And then we have these more important colony, as it has some vassals here, is assumed, and it is Mecasel of Tiurush. The Portuguese accidentally traded too liberally with one of their Brazilian puppet kingdoms, allowing it to begin modernization and become a regional power in its own right. They may or may not be conspiring with the Klalkawovo. So anyway, okay, so this is interesting. So I was going to assume that the Brazilians and the Neanderthal population, so the Kenwug, were gonna be enemies, but apparently since the colonizers arrived, they have found some common ground. So they could be conspiring, the Brazilians of Tiurush with the Albogukie of Klalkawovo, which are Kenwug, which are Neanderthals. Then we have a lot of oh man. Okay, when we have a lot of British colonies appears, there's not much of a description for them, I assume, or maybe I'm getting it wrong. Yeah, okay, there are descriptions. We have Port Cadogan and Port Astor. The Astor family, American and Italian branches, as well as the British, are the only family in the entire city. Hundreds of men bearing the international and money-laden surname agreed to establish the city. But how does one go from hundreds of men to a city of thousands? How does a population of solely men grow at all? The answer is, okay, I can't say this for YouTube, but you can see it. A surprising number of women are willing to be shipped across worlds when the alternative is death. Such women give a... yeah. Damn! Okay, I can't say this for YouTube, but you're reading it with me. Port Cadogan. When the British government sanctioned the Cadogan family in their making of the city, their loyalties were least concerned compared to the Italo-American Azores or the Yiddish Rothschilds. After all, their line was British as far back as anyone could trace. But that was just the thing. Further back than the Royals, further back than the English language, further back even than London. Indeed, they were Welsh. Welsh who spoke the Welsh tongue in private. Welsh who had many reasons to resent the British or rather English government. Welsh who, having discovered the descendants of Arturius and his peoples, saw in them a much worthier target of their loyalties than the horrid Saxons. They still keep up the appearance of a British port, but the women have long since been exchanged for more willing local women, and they fly the red dragon banners when nobody's looking. So this is pretty interesting. While there is the Astor family here, which is part of the realm of the British Empire, and it's loyal to the British Empire. Port Cadogan and their vassal states are actually like a Welsh post-colonial state that actually just shows themselves as British. We're also going to trace a direct line between these and the colonies in Mince and Nevis for the British, because it seems to be the same passage as these other colonial powers have made. So quickly, let's see here. We're just going to be connecting it with this random island that is not even mentioned, but it surely is the another British colony. And finally with the other territories here. We also have a lot of British puppet states, I assume to be Brazilian people, governed by the puppet states of the British Empire. Then we have Port Rothschild. Well, yeah, that's something, of course. Port Rothschild, the eponymous... Oh, what the hell does that even mean? I've never seen that word. Alright, never mind. That family that runs this port keeps a track record of dubious loyalty towards the crown they theoretically serve. Having enriched themselves from the Napoleonic Wars by funding the French war machine has made the family somewhat of a pariah in the British Empire, but their investments all over the globe made them too useful to simply remove. It was the French branch of the Rothschild family that brought a majority of the shares in the Dutch East India Company, as its value collapsed due to the fall of the Netherlands to Napoleon, while Britain's defeat in Europe lowered the price of shares in the EIC, causing a sale panic that the British branch of the Rothschilds took advantage of, purchasing the company. And after the French Rothschilds relocated to Britain before the ploy was discovered, they pushed for a merger of the both companies, becoming in practice the founders and majority of owners of the newborn ADEC. Okay, so this is so fucking cool, because I had never actually managed to figure out what the ADEC was. So for those that have seen the other episodes, the ADEC is mentioned everywhere. The ADEC, or ADEIC now that we actually know, is mentioned in the colonization of Athens, in the colonization of Xenonesia, in the colonization of the Serpent's Gate, in the colonization of Australia, in the colonization of Thought, and literally everywhere that the British have place, there probably is something related to the ADEC. And now we actually learn that there's actually the union of both the British East India Company and the Dutch East India Company, and it's governed by the Rothschilds. So, you know, makes sense, I guess. The Dutch in the colonies and the Anglo-Indians greatly welcomed this merger, suddenly becoming one of the most formidable naval powers in the world. And while some in Britain celebrated the new lands that were in paper added to the British Empire, and of course loved the fit that the French threw over it, many worried that the unscrupulous banking clan now found itself at the helm of virtually independent corporate empire. It was this empire that purchased one of the three port cities founded in Avalon, now a commerce and banking hub, and one might say the headquarters of the Rothschilds family. So this is crazy. Apparently, so the Rothschilds have, I guess, the major area in Avalon. Interesting. Alright, let's see what else is next. We have the French puppet states, Porte Fantasia, I don't know, Porte Fantaise. The small population of traders has been outnumbered by poets, writers, and romantics. So these are some French colonies. I guess there's no like proper French territory here, so I'm not gonna link them up with the colonies in Nouvelle Acadia and the Côte Espagnole here in the Mince and Nevis Islands, but I will trace a small line that connects them to that one territory in the south here that I've seen is actually French. So I'll be tracing that line right here. Oh, that's a horrible line to trace. I'm just gonna do it better. I'm not able to trace lines today. Horrible day to have eyes. Yeah, this goes fluid. Okay, so we covered all these territories here in the continent of Heber and Masog, and I think now it's time to go to Avalons. The Avalons. Also, we have this creature here. I don't know what this is. The Dobcharchu, aka the King Otter. The semi-aquatic beast is the most feared and the revered predator of Avalon. Looks like some kind of what are those called? Not badgers. Those things that you find in the water. It just looks like an overgrown animal like of those. I don't remember the name. On several occasions throughout ancient history, Individuals had someone who emerged from the mists of the coast of Ireland and terrorized their way into Gaelic folklore. Oh, so it's an animal of Gaelic folklore, which links it up with Brasil. Yes, that makes sense. The Avalons. Like any part of the world, the British Isles have their fair share of legends dating back to ancient times, and as it is with most legends, these tales carry with them grains of truth, however distorted through the process of being passed down across generations. The British would come to know exactly how much truth their legends held upon in discovering the twin continent of the Avalons, housing the descendants of both the Kingdom of Camelot and those who inhabited the mysterious misty lands of Brasil. One's first impression might be that these regions act as a sort of time capsule, having a haven for relics of the past to be preserved into the modern age. But such is not the case, as this new home would prove not to simply be preserving of legends, but continue their legacy. Just as the stories told of them evolved, the real people and cultures behind those two were distorted over the centuries. Through exposure to alien environments, once again alien means new, the influence of native Neanderthal cultures and millennia of history, separating them even further from the image portrayed in the myths of old. The concept of past relics being warped by the unstoppable march of time also applies to the local wildlife. Formerly contagious within the ice wall, these lands would break away and drift south, with the frozen terrain thawing to make way for lush green landscapes. The once measly mosses, liveworts and hairgrass that barely clung on through extreme cold and lightless winters now dominate the environment in a variety of robust forms. The animals too, midges, penguins and seals, have deviated greatly into a variety of barely recognizable forms. Through mysterious means, likely just as mystical as the arrival of Brazilians and Camelotians that came along after them, a population of Neanderthals would arrive and make their home into the region, diverging into the Kenwug of the north and the Bobgo of the south. Those Neanderthals embarked on a path of development, abandoning the hunter-gatherer lifestyle and learning to create organized society of midge farmers and penguin herders. With the age of imperialism in full swing, now it is the time for legends to clash with the modernity. In the native societies find themselves besieged from all sides, as diseases ravage the populations, driving many societies to total collapse as local warlords battle for dominance and colonial powers seek to conquer and settle their lands as a new chapter begins in the sea of the saga of the Avalons. That is crazy. So not only... Okay, so I thought... Oh my god. I'm a bit confused. So are the Avalons both the islands? Or is Avalon this one and is... Okay, so I think Heber Masog is this northern island, while Arfornia is the southern island. Let's read about Arfornia first and then go for the states that inhabit it. Also, what the hell is that? The Avalons, the towering herbivorous penguin, lives in the life-worth jungles of southern Arfornia, using its blade-like flippers to cut down foliage and defend itself from predators. I do not believe that. I think that's a myth. Arfornia, realm of the Midge and the Messiah. Perhaps the most iconic legend of Great Britain, the tales of King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, and the Kingdom of Camelot have long been an integral component of British culture and identity. Just as with the disappearing island of Brasil in Irish folklore, there was indeed truth behind these myths. There was once a Kingdom of Camelot, where there lived a man named Arthur, who recovered a sword imbued with ancient and mysterious powers, using it to vanquish his foes and rise to power as a great king, all the while being guided by a half-mad master of the occult known as Merlin. Merlin hailed from the island of Brasil, which would periodically relocate to the Second Globe, or the Second Ring. During his time there, he discovered that his magical powers were immensely more potent than they were on Earth, allowing him to expand his lifespan and accomplish great mystical feats, which had earned him much fame and adoration across the British archipelago. Every 7 years, when he returned to Earth, he would tour the nearby islands and garner wealth as a consultant of Roman nobility. One day, to his horrors, he would attempt to return to his homeland to find the island had vanished and to the Second Globe without him. So he anxiously waited for the decades of Brasil to appear, but it never did, and he sunk into a deep depression and later madness, becoming a reclusive hermit in the wilderness of Britain. Eventually, he discovered a holy sword Excalibur, an ancient enchanted artifact which could facilitate his return to the world beyond the ice wall, but he was unable to use it, tainted in some way that denied his access to its otherworldly energy. Eventually, he found someone that the sword deemed worthy to wield it, and trained Arthur to access its full powers, which he secretly planned to use for his own benefit. Arthur was keen enough to detect Merlin's ulterior motives, and did his best to keep the wizard from getting his hands on the sword, but eventually he was mortally wounded in a battle against the Anglo-Saxon invaders. Then, in his darkest hour, Merlin made a proposal to the king, but he was in no position to refuse. The wizard offered him a chance to flee to the place where his magic could potentially heal him, so that he could return someday to Britain and drive out the Germanic menace. Arthur begrudgingly accepted, leading him, Merlin, and his entire kingdom to be transported to the southern continent of the Avalons. When it became clear that Merlin had no intention or capability to reverse this relocation, Arthur attempted to have him slain for his treachery, but the wizard escaped, and the people of Camelot found themselves stranded in a bizarre new world. Merlin would never be heard from again. He apparently failed to find his way back to Brasil and was thought to have settled among the natives. This would lead to a deep mutual hatred and rivalry between the Camelotian people and the Bogbo Neanderthals in this land, that the new inhabitants had dubbed Arfornia after their great leader. Oh, so Arthur. Okay, that makes sense. With a native population already primed for diseases by the Brazilians and larger, more righteous populations of new arrivals, there was very little mixing, and the continent is defined by conflict between the Midge-worshipping Bogbo Neanderthals and the very Christian, they consider modern European heretics, Camelotians. The harsh jungles and much more militarized states, even having primitive gunpowder weapons, has made them much more capable of fending off colonial invaders. For the first time in history, the two races have ceased their quarreling to focus on dealing with the impact of modern diseases and cooperate in defending their sovereignty against the encroaching empires of the known world. That's a hell of a lore, that's for sure. Damn. I don't believe this is the case, honestly. I think it's a bit too fantastical to believe. It's not impossible for Arthur to have existed at some point in history. He was probably some Celtic guardian of the island of Britain against the Anglo-Saxon invaders, but to think that both him and Brasil were transported all the way through the Second Ring, I think it's a bit of an exaggeration, but let me know what you guys think. Now let's actually get to the states that inhabit the lands of Arfornia. We have the Curandoms of the Curandoms of Morosi, Camelotians that were introduced to Islam by Ottoman explorers, but their contact with the Ottomans was so brief that their form of Islam is only half understood, but effective enough to fuel the rise of their nation. The defining belief of their sect is that there only is one Quran in existence, they have it, all others are fake, and no copies can be made. They keep their secret text safe in an extravagant temple high above the mists of the jungles below, carefully guarded by a circle of elite imams who study and dispense its wisdom to the masses. We have the Halolate of Gekigonj, Bogbo who were also converted to Islam without fully understanding it. They and the Melorosi share a seething hatred for each other. Alright. Their sect of Islam is characterized by its strong emphasis of dietary laws, of course utilizing the sacred Midge to determine what is and what isn't halal. Well, I mean, sure, why not, right? Oh, here we have the Holy Kingdom of Avalon. Set the rivalry with the Wawuba to the side to fend off the godless Gauls and marauding Saxons. So I'm going to assume this is like where Camelot spawns in this world. Then we have Sankoran, France, populated by Muslim West Africans who have consistently aggravated with the heresies of their neighbors. Alright. Then we have the Innerlands, which are lightly populated due to diseases, home to Camelotians who dislike the Kingdom of Avalon, and Bogbo who dislike Wawuba. Here we have the oh my bro, these names are awful. The Obabat of Wawuba, the most ancient and powerful nation of the Bogbo people, which has formed largely in response to Camelotian aggressions. evolving over time from a confederation of tribes to an ethnic empire, set their rivalry with Avalon to the side to fend off Midgeless wine sellers and Midgeless tea sellers. So I'm going to assume the French and the British. They even have another port here. Oh, we actually already mentioned it, Port Fantasia. Then we have the B, the Breninte of... oh my... brah. No, I'm not going to pronounce this. This is insane. Then we have the Mecasel of Salkenu, multi-ethnic matriarchal mercantile states, the middleman between the Bawuba, Avalon and the rest of the world. Interesting. Finally, we have a small explanation of what the blessed Midge is. There was a very often recurrence of the word Midge here. I knew it was something about insects, but I wasn't sure what it is, so maybe this will explain exactly what we are looking at. Also, look at this. Nice colors. Anyway, the blessed Midge, the holiest of symbols to the Bagua people, these extremely colored insects are venerated as omens of health, good fortune, and righteous guidance. Legend says that when the Neanderthals first found themselves astray in this foreign land, it was the spirit of the Midge who guided them through the alien wilderness, showing the Bagua ancestors how to find nutritious food, where to build their new homes, and warn them of approaching dangers. In actuality, the males of this genus of Midge simply perched themselves on top desirable locations and guard them from others as mating display. Millennia of years of worship have granted them something of a supernatural aura. Here we have a Bagua warrior. How it's... oh, they go in battle naked. Damn, that's crazy. Okay, so these were the Avalons, Heber, masog, and Arfornia. That was a lot of lore. That was a lot of lore. For the amount of land, there was more lore than Minas and Nevis, and Minas and Nevis are like way bigger than them. So I guess the interesting part here in the down south. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to do the Islands of the Blessed in this episode, but I definitely want to do the Island of Ogygia. So before I actually get into the Island of Ogygia, one thing I noticed is that Ogygia might be the southernmost territory, or almost southernmost, because we have here more Diari here. But Ogygia might be the southernmost independent territory in the world. In the world beyond the S-Worlds, so it's like double the southern, right? It's insane. Okay, so Ogygia. For those that do not know, Ogygia was the land or the island where Ulysses, which was a Greek hero and in the champion times of ancient Greece, after the War of Troy, the Trojan War, Ulysses wanted to go back to Ogygia, which was back to his island, which was an island next to Greece, but he never made it to the island in time, and he was instead transported in a bunch of adventures all the way to the Mediterranean and to next-by areas. And that's why I'm interested in Ogygia, because Ogygia was the land where he found Calypso, if I recall correctly, which was like this non-dying witch, which would make him try to stay and fall in love with her, but Ulysses was too strong and too much of a moral compass to actually remain with her forever, and he left the island. So Ogygia was an interesting place in Greek mythology, so I hope the Ogygia in the actual land beyond the S-Walls is as much as an interesting place. Ogygia, the destination of the doomed. This arid island hidden in the far reaches of the southern Neptunian Ocean takes the form of a massive extinct volcano. On the surface, this isolated landmass seems downright quiet and unassuming compared to other regions of the New World, New World. But as time went on, its early explorers would take notice of bizarre behaviors affecting all life forms of its immediate vicinity. Every so often, a few seals would break off from the beachside colonies and crawl miles inland towards the island's peak. Great numbers of scavenging birds form a massive unbroken ring hovering above the central crater, circling it for 24/7, only stopping when they die of exhaustion, or to consume carcasses of creatures who didn't reach their destination. All tortoises are often spotted making the treacherous journey up steep terrain towards the crater, crossing the rim only to tumble down towards a large pit waiting for them at the bottom. The gaping mouth of the dead volcano that silently whispers to every mind of creatures that is close to death, beckoning them to make it their final resting place. That includes sick and old humans. As it turns out, the extinct volcano is very much alive, and feasting on plentiful sacrifices provided by its grateful inhabitants. Every so often, the Maw of Ogygia returns, the favor, erupting a thick black nutrient-rich sludge full of unknown chemicals and exotic microbes, a substance known as Ogyggian nectar. Not much to do with Ulysses, but whatever. Here we have the actual island, which, oh my god, it's part of Mundaberia? that's that. Come on, man. You really made them part of the Basque Empire? Alright, whatever. That's a bit too much, isn't it? That just me? I feel like it's a bit too much. In accordance with the strategy of seeking out the most undesirable and out-of-the-way territories to bolster the size of their fledgling empire, the Basque explorers have established a self-sufficient colony here, which has been mostly entirely isolated from the world since its establishment. Recently, they have made significant progress in harvesting and discovering practical applications for Ogyggian nectar, seeking profit and foreign trade by importing the substance overseas. I mean, it makes sense for the story of the Mundabarian Empire. Bit insane, but who am I to judge, am I right? Alright, so now we can either finish the episode or go all the way to the Islands of the Blessed, which are like 4,000 more hours of video. Nice. The Avalons were a lot, man. Let's do this island here, Das Boga. Crystals of the Light God. The massive crystalline structures of Das Boga are a mystery. Great, light-reflecting pillars of many colored paints in the skies and the ground, redirecting light and in occasion cause forest fires. Though naturally occurring, some of these crystals can form more complex structures that make some wonder if the hands of an older, long-gone civilization might have passed by these islands long ago. Long uninhabited since their discovery, Das Boga has recently been settled by private venture led by a wealthy Croatian adventurer, funded with generous donations to the Adaic, and his mismatched settlers are braving the crystalline wilds. Look at the crystals, man. Those are some pretty crystals. Also Croatian? I have a Croatian friend which will see this and go like, Croatia mentioned. I mean, whoever mentioned Croatia, right? Like in exploration stuff? No way, man. After a bit of thinking, I think we will start with the Islands of the Blessed. This series of archipelagos in the Neptunian Ocean are not united by geography, biology, or culture, but by a common ultra-natural phenomenon, that being floral hyperabundance. The plant life of these islands grows at extreme speeds, in their extreme densities, reaches extreme sizes, and with extreme ferocity forcing their settlers to innovate ways to constantly fight off the endless overgrowth of their greenery. Each of these archipelagos expresses their phenomena in their own unique way, with different forms of plant life dominating each one to produce bizarre and chaotic environments that break the limits of ecology. Which is a pretty good... Okay, so this is very interesting. This is like... I'm just gonna look at the lore first and then actually explore the settlers. Les Généraux. No single type of category of plant life grows especially abundant here. Instead, Généraux supports the most densely vegetated rainforest in all of Pilar Mundi. The sheer density of its plant matter conceals the entirety of its surface, so its terrain is largely unknown. Even with modern agricultural technology, humans have only been successful in clearing and keeping clear a small percentage of its land area. A clear-cut patch of land will become overgrown within a day and will be undistinguishable from the surrounding forest within a week. Fire falls to keep the plants at bay as well, with the forest growing in the burned areas faster than the fire can expand, effectively surrounding and smothering the flame. Only one thing can keep the forests at bay: consumption. Plant matter must be constantly and consistently foraged and eaten by local residents and livestock to prevent it from overgrowing their lands. Thusly, the natural productions of the forest alone supports the local population, and so almost all the agricultural products can be shipped and sold to support populations abroad. That's why Les Généraux was among the most sought out and fought over territories during the age of colonization of the Atlas, or the lands beyond the walls, despite the challenge of establishing a settlement here. So this is like a continuous rebirth of territories and wealth, so it makes sense that everybody would want it. Imagine if this already exists, right, on Earth. There are some rainforests that overproduce every time, or like some valleys that are overly abundant in some materials. or overly fertile, like the Bangladesh area. And this is like one into the ice walls, and to the lands beyond the ice walls. So it makes sense that everybody would want it. And as everybody, I really mean everybody, because it appears that not only we have the Grönvig, Scandinavians, these things, I'm not even, oh my god, I don't know how to pronounce Dutch, bro. Juwigerost, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Then we have the Village in Rosé, the French. We have the Hara Gurdwara, which are the Sikhs, even the Sikhs. The Sikh government demands that all visitors receive free food, much to the annoyance of the corporate entity that runs their colonies. Interesting. Then we have the Mansa Musa of Portugal. That's a good reference to the king. And then we have generosity, just called like that in English. And even this small, very, very small part of the British land in the island of Généraux, we have the states, or like people of Tam Göbek, Ottoman castaways who, with a lack of agricultural manpower and machinery in the wake of the empire's collapse, began pioneering the wilderness, creating the network of tree houses and settlements, and subsisting on the natural abundance surrounding them. Even with the riches of the forest at their disposal, they were more than eager to accept British protection in exchange for access to modern goods. So that's why they are both colored in this grayish color in their borders, but also colored in the red for the British. Since this is basically owned by anyone, I'm not going to trace any like lines of exploration, since it appears to be a bit too much, but you know, you saw it, so you know what's going on. Then we have Cordia, Scandinavia. Insert joke about Danes and having potatoes stuck in their throats. Alright, whatever. Oh wait, that's not, like, that's the state. This is the actual continent. Potatopia. Bro, why are there so many jokes, like joke continents in this stuff? We're gonna be like serious stuff like General and then Potatopia. Who did this, bro? After visiting the other nearby archipelagos, one would be shocked to find that the surface of these islands and seemingly only lightly vegetated, in some places even barren looking. Then one would notice the thickness of the mud and soil covering the landmass, to the point where much of the coastline is and beaches but muddy cliff faces, of all which a large chunks often fall into the sea, resulting in the coastal waters being permanently stained brown and murky. Digging into the soil would reveal the true nature of Potatopia hydro abundance, that of tubers and root vegetables. Some of these vegetables grow large enough to be hollowed and used as houses, as you can see by this thing. So, like, the Scandinavians own a part, and then Viltesfood was founded by rogue Irish settlers with stolen British ships. They maintain friendly relations with the French and Scandinavians, since their coastal waters are so muddy that normal ships have difficulty sailing through them. They rely on rich Cordia for much of their foreign trade. Alright, so the Potato Islands. I don't really like this. It's a bit too dumb. Like, with this, I can really understand, and parts of this could be true, but with this, like, seriously, Potato Islands? Whatever, man. Then we have the Omaldantes. The plants that dominate the Omaldantes aren't found on the landmass of the island themselves, but in the waters surrounding it. A rich forest of seagrass and algae fills the island's many lagoons, which attract all sorts of marine grazers and predators from the surrounding oceans. While the other regions of the Isles of the Blessed possess beautifully lush landscapes that seem intentionally designed to allow the animals that feed on them to flourish, it's hard to not see Omaldanes as inherently sinister. The surface landscape of the region is almost entirely barren of plant life. Instead, the surface is covered in animal matter, great mounds of dead bodies rotting in the sun, being dug into, fought over, and consumed by all sorts of scavenging animals. The bodies are those of large sea creatures, periodically swept on the surface and onto the beach by powerful waves, as if the island were some kind of trap meant to draw in fresh meat from the sea. Local reports of sightings of grotesque creatures known as globsters, which crawl on the carcass mounds and drag their half-decomposed bodies deep into the mainland, where it is said there lurks a hideous titan beast with a bottomless appetite. I would have liked to see that. It's unfortunate they do not show us the titan beast. Would have been a nice addition, I feel like. So they're Basque. The Olmoldantes, like this is the actual island, and then you go here and you say, oh, it's Basque. And Mundaberry, another colony of Mundaberry, you know what that means. It's time to trace the border with the Mundabarians, also with the Scandinavians here. So let's go like this. And then with the Mundabarians. The Mundabarians must be one of the most interesting colonial empires in the world beyond these walls. I would have never expected the Basques to do all this stuff. So let's see what the actual colony looks like. Mundaberia Gorportuense, descendants of Lothian Basques and various other pirates, living in poverty but well fed by the abundant sea life and birds. Half of the population went mad and formed a death cult, while the other half were eventually contacted by the French and found new economic opportunities as privateers and whalers. Tensions rise as the cultists see the sale of whale flesh as stealing from the island. Well, that's just great, isn't it? And then we have the island of Bamboo Celeste. Bamboo Celeste. From a distance, the surface of the Bamboo Celeste island appears like the head of a hairbrush, with countless towering skulls of bamboo stretching high into the sky. The landscape is dominated by these impossibly thick forests of bamboo, which grows in a wide variety of unique forms, the most voracious which grow up to 4 meters per day, so quickly that it can be observed with the naked eye. Along the coastline, the immense stalks will constantly lurch and collapse under their own weight, producing a deafening crack as they collide with the water. Damn. Then we have the island of Zulpilpsal. Native humans of unknown origin skilled in traversing, making use of, and building on, and diving into flooded pools of vines. They didn't hit off well with explorers and suffered greatly from foreign diseases, but avoided conquest due to their expertise on the terrain. Some nearby colonial settlements engage in wife trading with them as a way to accrue their knowledge of the vinelands, as it is the only form of trade that the zoo will accept. We have the tapis de vigne. Vines are the dominant form of plant matter in tapis de vigne, which quickly grow to cover the terrain and any fixed surface, and then on top of each other produce layer upon layer that conceal the landscape and even the surrounding waters in a dense carpet of tangled roots and shoots. So this was the independent Zulpilpsal, and then we have the non-independent Tapis de Vigne, or North Sea Republic. The French had no idea what to do with this land, so they let their pet Germans manage it for them. Pet Germans referring to the fact that the French own or at least govern much of the parts of Germany indirectly. Finally, we have only a couple more islands to cover. We have the archipelago of Aelfaeri, undoubtedly the most pleasant and easily managed of the islands of the Blessed. Here, flowers of all shapes and sizes grow in great abundance. While those allergic to pollen may find themselves deathly ill if they so much as sail downwind from the island, they are overall unintrusive to the settlers. Instead of devising mechanisms to constantly fend off the overgrowth, locals welcome the flowers into their cities, where they decorate the streets with brilliant colors and fill the air with sweet aromas. The flowers prove to be quite lucrative as well, with the islands exporting massive amounts of quantities of exotic dyes, nectars, scents, and honey produced by its bees. It appears to be divided in two parts. We have Aelfaeri New Bollen Streak, which is part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and then we have Blumenfeldmeer. Who owns this territory depends on who you ask. The product of Austrian, Italian, and Ruchertolian investment basically operates as an independent company. Okay, so with that, I think we finished the Island of the Blessed. This was, I think, the worst of the territories beyond the ice walls. I think this is the least possible to exist one, and it's the least realistic one in any way, both because of the overproduction just seems a bit too much, and these stories are a bit too ridiculous, like the Potato Islands, just come on, man. And yeah, I don't really like this, but I love the Heber masog, Arfornia, and the Avalons. This was very interesting. Also, we forgot to mention this, but there are dragons here or something. There's the myth of a dragon here. Yep. Crazy looking dragon, but you know. So I hope you liked this video, I hope you liked this episode, I hope you enjoyed the explanations I gave you for these territories. The download link to the map will be in the comment pins, and you can join our Discord server if you want to know more about this, or the Discord server of the creator of the map if you want to know more and ask him directly. Yeah, just subscribe to the channel and like the video, and we will see each other in the next video. Goodbye.